This is Making Better Decisions. I'm your host, Ryan Sullivan. Decisions are where rubber meets the road for organizations. Each week, we'll be learning from people who are on the front lines of turning raw data into better outcomes for their organizations. This show is sponsored by Canopy Analytic, helping companies make better decisions using data. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Making Better Decisions podcast. Today's guest has quite a bit of engineering education, culminating with a master's in advanced electronic systems engineering from Texas Tech. For the past 20 years, her career has spanned the energy, manufacturing, and software industry. She's worked for the Alternative Energy Institute, Texas Instruments, Timco Software, and more. In 2020, she was recognized as one of the top 30 women advancing artificial intelligence. She was previously a professor at the Julio Garavito Colombian School of Engineering, teaching electronic engineering. Please welcome the Field Chief Data Officer at Dataiku, Catalina Herrera. Welcome to the show, Catalina.
Thanks, Ryan. Thanks for having us.
I'm excited. What is one thing you wish more people knew about using data to make better decisions?
That's not an easy answer, but I will say the one thing for sure that I will say is that it's not just about the data. And this is where we need to start thinking about what kind of data outcomes are being generated out there. So whether it is a dashboard or a machine learning model or AI-driven insights, we have to think about those as not just standalone tools, but part of a bigger system that actually requires a strong data governance to reduce the friction between people, processes, and technology, right? Because it's not just about having good data. I think we agree that, yes, we know garbage in, garbage out. Yes, we know explainability and traceability and all of that is fundamental as part of these pipelines, but it is also about how seamlessly it flows through the organization, right? Because the framework will actually build trust. Without trust, you don't have a group of people making better decisions. And that trust doesn't happen if you don't know that behind the scenes, you actually have a framework that is supporting the how we are communicating within each other and how we are maximizing the opportunity that we can actually use data for. So in short, data-driven success is not just about the data, it is about how we connect and collaborate around it. And I will say that's the result of 20 years of being in the enterprises trying to maximize what we can do with these data outcomes.
You just mentioned that, whether it is some sort of model or report or, extending that to, database, anything, any sort of data asset, that it's part of a bigger structure. Can you tell me what you mean by that?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's think about what needs to happen for somebody to generate a dashboard. As an example, if we think about that user interface that is actually aggregating and gathering all of these insights for somebody to have that description of what's going on in terms of the data to make a decision, we'll have to think about many components that sometimes, they're not so obvious. These are the artifacts that go behind the scenes. The fact that you have to connect to a SIO, the fact that most of the time the data is not ready to create any insights to it, and some ETL and processes will have to be included as part of it. The fact that all of these artifacts can be created using different skills, technology has come a long way, and most of these artifacts are not code-only artifacts, right? Now you have personas that are actually connecting to data sources and creating dashboards in different ways. So at the end, all of these pieces or artifacts have to be part of a bigger framework. And that's what I refer to. When you think about one data outcome as a unique component, isolated from everything else, is where you minimize what you really can accomplish with that. And if we are thinking about enterprise and enterprise value driven because of AI, we need to think about what is behind the scenes of the enterprise deployments. And enterprise deployments are going to have a bunch of people that work in different teams that are asking different questions to the data because they all bring different domain expertise and different backgrounds. And the fact that whatever they are using as a data outcome is just a piece of a pipeline. And that's what I refer to. We have artifacts that belong to a pipeline that is actually removing frictions, people, technology, processes. If you're going to trust the data, you need to trust the data. And if you need to make a decision regardless your business and what you care about, you need to trust what the data is telling you, but also you need to know what questions to ask to this data. And the trust that a framework brings to the table removes those frictions. So when you say one thing you wish people knew about how to use data is like, hey, it's not just about the data. It's a little harder than that.
Yeah. I like how you use the word framework. Obviously, you focus primarily on the enterprise. One of the things that I have found being a consultant, and I've been very lucky to have the opportunity to work with massive names in the Fortune 10 all the way to mom and pop shops, if you will, by comparison. And one of the things that I have counterintuitively found is that the most enterprise end of the scale actually has some of the largest difficulty getting impact. Now, I don't think that this is earth-shattering business news that larger organizations are less nimble than small organizations. And this is a trade-off. There are all sorts of pros and cons to size and ways that these larger organizations structure themselves and undertake initiatives to combat the effects of their size, which, cuts both ways, right? I wonder if you have any advice for how larger organizations, whether it's through a specific framework or through something else, can get tangible short to medium term benefit from data and analytics against all odds with their size.
Yeah. And I do have a couple of insights, and I will have to briefly summarize the last 20 years on the technology in the field and the use of technology in the field. So let's just start with the fact that you have many components. This is a multivariable problem, and we have to see it as a multivariable problem. It's not only about, hey, let's connect to our data sources and see what this data is telling us, but it's also about, do we have clear roles defined? Do we know who owns this data outcome? Do we know if this data outcome needs to be updated? Do we know if a new revision needs to be deployed into production? Do we know who is responsible for a potential bad outcome when we have a generative AI model hallucinating in a use case, for example? Do we have the right processes and data management initiatives to ensure that we can connect this group of people that is trying to leverage this technology for an enterprise use case? So the answer to your question will be, first of all, being aware that this is a multivariable problem and that tech itself is not going to solve it. So we need to ensure that people understands what their contribution is as part of this framework. But if perhaps you are the domain expert that is interrogating the data, you bring to the table completely different skills from the persona that help you bring all the data sources that you needed to have a complete vision about your use case and your problem. So the one thing that enterprise deployments, can optimize into is the digitalization of those processes, because at the end, the biggest friction that exists in today's enterprise deployments is the fact that we don't only work with silos of data, we also work with siloed teams and siloed technology pockets. And when we think about that holistically, it's very hard to collaborate when you have pieces that do not talk to each other. So think about a puzzle. Everybody has a piece to the puzzle, and then think about many puzzles, and everybody bringing a different piece that doesn't belong to that puzzle. So how are you going to see that full picture? And that's the framework that I am referring to. So when I say framework, it's like let's align how we, as the enterprise that we are targeting the use of technology, but also are very aware of who is asking or interrogating this data, how, and the internal processes that we will have to follow to ensure that we have trusted data outcomes. And that goes to the how we are connecting all of these as part of that system, right? That's what I refer when I say framework. It's a governance that is not only taking care of permissions and access and roles, but it's also a holistic view as a system that is actually generating data outcomes that we, as the specific domain that we are experts on, understand and trust. Therefore, maximize what that can do for us from the value business perspective. No, because it's not only, oh, I'm going to create machine learning. Well, cool. You know how to do a random forest model? Fine. But if nobody is using that, it's useless. If nobody is actually connecting that with the bad business value, useless. If nobody is responsible for the outcomes that you are generating, again, isolated piece of it.
Yeah. Also, thank you for mentioning random forest before you said the word large language model. Don't get me wrong, really killer revolutionary technology. There's just, there's a lot of good stuff that's out there. I love hearing people talk about it. A thing that's interesting, just to swing the pendulum the other way, is so we just talked, and I think you had some really tangible suggestions around thinking through things at the enterprise end of the spectrum. Even though it's not your, I would say, primary area, for small and mid-sized businesses, how would you change that advice, if at all?
Yeah, no, it doesn't change it's applicable, but what it changes is the amount of responsibilities that individual have. So an enterprise, you are responsible of this piece, but you need to think outside your box and ensure that you are part of a bigger framework. For the smaller deployments on smaller companies, you may wear multiple hats. But at the end, the goal is the same, which is whatever data outcome you're producing has to be trustable and it has to be consistent with your own processes. I mean, it can be a solo company, but if it is not aligned with your vision, your mission, and your own guardrails, then equally useless. So for me, it's kind of the same advice. The scale is different. The amount of resources that you're going to use completely different. The amount of technology pieces and super crowded ecosystem, super different. Let's talk about an enterprise account today that has been in the business for 20, 30 years and perhaps acquiring this company and this company and this company. Think about that ecosystem from the infrastructure perspective. Messy, right? A little piece of everything. Pieces are not tech communicating and so on. Now think about a newer company that is just deploying everything in cloud, and you have a couple of cloud vendors included in a very controlled infrastructure. Very different from the complexity of the problems, but exactly the same from the data outcome, trusted, empower human with technology perspectives, right? Make the most out of it. And the how is the same. The complexity comes with the amount of people that is involved and the amount of processes that are involved, because everybody has different compliance and regulatory standards, and it correlates with domain specifics and with verticals, but holistically it's the same. We are all trying to maximize what we can do with this data.
I'm interested to dig in a little bit to the machine learning and the AI side of things. Obviously, that's where you're living right now. One of the things that I find most personally interesting is kind of the middle of the stack, if that makes any sense. So obviously, a business goes out there, they do all of these business processes. They're doing whatever it is that makes them money. Then there's this big kind of gap. And then there's all of the solutions that people talk about. One of the themes that I've explored on the podcast is, okay, this is awesome. Like, as the pace of technological growth continues and we start getting all these great things and they start becoming more commercially viable and more specialized, every single day I'm seeing some cool new tool that does something amazing that takes way too much time right now. And I just see the business landscape getting revolutionized on, like, it feels like a weekly basis. However, I have concerns that we get to this place where we built this very hollowed out platform of stuff that nobody understands and isn't super focused on getting back to accuracy and self-evaluation and all those things, and we just end up in this echo chamber of all these tools doing all these jobs. um, to me, data and constantly tying these modern tools back to kind of raw, simple data analysis, having really good information architecture, metadata, like all of these, like, things which are not as shiny and beautiful as a, like, hey, check out our new SaaS tool that you don't have to do anything and you make it rains money, no effort. Like, it's not as shiny as that, but feels to me like flossing your teeth. Like, this is what is needed for the future. Do you think I'm crazy?
No, you're not. And it's not easy today. I mean, it is a very crowded ecosystem, and I do think that a lot of vendors claim to do the same. But then, if you think about holistically, what makes it so exciting and what is so different for the domain experts, for the users, for the regular humans empowered by technology today versus 10 years ago, I would say very tangible the fact that technologies like OpenAI, Hugging Face, Llamas, Bedrocks, everything that is LLM related was released to what I call the masses, the everybody's, the public. So a couple of years ago, it was not a requirement to be an engineer, a developer, or a coder to be able to interrogate an AI system in real time and get very powerful interaction right there 2 years ago, right? So besides being super crowded ecosystem, I will say that we have to include the Gen AI pivotal moment as a very important variable to consider, because once we understand that is more than just data and that we are targeting a data outcome that is connected to a use case that at the same time is connected to some kind of value, this is where we are talking about ROI, which is the main difference between having a group of experts that are very good with technology versus empowering your domain experts to really make better decisions and move a needle that everybody defined at the beginning what the needle was. So yes, very crowded ecosystems, but also a very important variable that is accelerating time to value, because I do see that Gen AI and Gen AI use cases are actually empowering who I call the non-usual suspects to use very high tech within those use cases. So a human resources team now is interrogating their own human resources policies because they have retrieval augmented generation use cases that is consuming all that in unstructured data and enriching those models. Beautiful. And who is behind the scenes and who are the developers? Really, technology is already there where developing is not the friction, but keeping the human in the loop, ensuring that you don't have hallucinations, ensuring that whatever data outcome you are getting it's aligned within your guardrails, security processes is the real priority right now, because the technology is there. But we need to do is better use it towards a common goal. And that common goal is going to depend on who is asking what to that data, and that's going to depend on the business unit that you are working with, right?
I think you just hit the nail on the head. Like that, the stuff that you just mentioned is the hard part, right? Like the shiny window dressing portion, we actually have that. Right? Really cool. It's the like, I hate to say it this way, but like I feel like particularly in America, we like shiny, we like innovation, we like fast, we like low effort. Um, why not? Sure, of course. But I think there is sometimes a lack of desire, or let's say this. Maintenance is not glamorous. Infrastructure is not glamorous. And maintenance and infrastructure are the two things that are fundamentally required to ensure you don't build a system that straight up lies to you. I talk to so many organizations and I talk to them about like the difference between like a yellow error and a red error. So there are some times where like a system will fail and it doesn't quite tell you that it failed. Like it still gives an answer, and that answer is wrong, but it's not like possibility of a wrong answer. That is actually way more dangerous to me than the type of thing that actually gets people's attention, which is like something breaks, it's on fire. What, hooray, attention over here. Because then we're alerted to there being a problem. And one of the things that I see is if those unglamorous pieces are not effectively handled, if we're not doing infrastructure, if we're not doing maintenance, we're going to have a set of systems that people spent a lot of money on that they don't understand and that they believe in that give them inaccurate information. How do we stop this?
We have to digitalize the process, and that's the part that is tricky, right? So for you, it's like, okay, who is going to maintain this infrastructure? Who is going to maintain this data outcome? Well, let's go back for a millisecond.
The least favorite question of every like modern tech purchasing journey.
Exactly. It's not just a shiny toy. It's
Yeah.
actually the way we are empowering our teams to make the best decisions that they can make. Therefore, it has to be a trusted framework system where if I see a data outcome, I know for a fact somebody owns a piece, somebody has a role, somebody signing off redeployment after a drift for a predictive model in production, somebody owns bad outcome, an hallucination. Like is exactly, I think being aware of the artifacts that are part of the pipeline that need to be maintained for that system to be as optimal as possible. And when you say infrastructure and version controlling and all of that, complex, especially the longer it has been. Because if you start mixing 20, 30 years of infrastructure, hardware, and software, and then you add people, and then you add processes, and then you add regulation, it's like blowing the multivariable model that, if not optimal and not well defined from the beginning, it's just a mess within a mess within a mess within a mess. And at the end, there is not a seamlessly way to actually consume this data through the organization with the proper roles and responsibilities. And I think that's the more we understand about the potential negative outcomes of this, and the more we understand regulations like the UI Act and whoever else is defining what is the footprint that we need to follow in terms of the process to ensure that we do have our guardrails and that whatever we are generating is part of a bigger system.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's really difficult in my personal experience to stop the excitement train.
Even you don't have to stop it.
Exactly. That was going to be my follow up. I'm not entirely sure that like stopping it or being like, hey, everybody, like, don't do AI. Like, that's really, really bad advice.
Yeah, no. For me, it's the opposite.
Exactly.
Let's understand what this is doing. Let's understand how we're going to make it better and how we're going to connect it with our own process. And that's the balance that needs to happen. And when I say this is a multivariable model, it's not just about the cool, shiny toy, right?
Exactly. It's like, I imagine a situation where it's a bit like a car. And someone's like, "Hey, we invented cars." Everyone's like, "Oh, wow, that's great. We'll be able to like go all sorts of places and it won't take as long. This is going to be great." And then someone's like, "Hey, so what about brakes?"
Yes. Did you change the oil?
Well, the car's about going. We don't want to stop. We want to go. And it's like, "Okay, but like we definitely need brakes." It is a complete package if we're going to do it right. It involves information architecture. It involves maintenance. It involves testing and comparison against other methods. It involves understanding that there are additional types of models that can either be more cost effective or even just straight up more accurate. Um, One of the key roles that I think like a forum like this plays is in a bit like in praise of that type of stuff, right? Like it's okay, cool. Well, right now software is the big thing. Okay, well, what about the HVAC person that makes sure the data center operates at an acceptable temperature and doesn't set itself on fire? The whole piece of the puzzle.
I actually like your car analogy, and I'm going to add a couple of variables to that car analogy because if you
Please.
if you want to get to that place, guess what? You have to go through traffic. There are going to be stoplights. You will have to stop on a stoplight. If not, you're going to get a ticket. So you're going to have to follow the speed limits. You're going to have to follow basic ABCs. Those are the basic ABCs that correlate to that framework that I'm preferring from the beginning. Enjoy your car. Speed up when you can, but stop at the traffic light if you need to. And be aware of the potential of the car. As in, yes, I am seeing I can go over 100 miles per hour right here, right now. Enjoy it. Enjoy the sound of the engine. Go for it. But if you see a traffic light 5 miles from there, like you're gonna have to stop. You're gonna have to follow some basics. And the more or the better those basics are defined, the more optimal the whole system is going to be. When you get into your car today, you already know organically that you stop at the traffic lights, right? And that's the organic behavior that we should make part of that culture. If it's going to be a data driven culture, you need to define what that means. You need to belong to the framework. You need to know that as a pilot of a very cool car, you will have to stop at the traffic lights. It doesn't matter how cool your car is.
We've talked a lot at I would argue, fairly technical kind of IT level. And we've alluded a little bit to some of the strategy on the business side of the house. To bring it full circle, you started our conversation by saying it's not just the data. In fact, I would argue, as strange as this may sound, that not only is it not all about the data, it's not even mostly about the data. For everybody listening that is more on the business and the leadership side, or if you use like kind of a hub and spokes model that's out on the spokes, believe in the power of data, want to use data, want to improve the organization, but that's not their primary area of expertise. They are primarily consumers as opposed to generators. What advice do you give to those people to maximize the accuracy and the future benefit that they get out of all of these tools?
Yeah, that's huge. Then I have one word, well, literacy, AI literacy. We are all learning, and this is a learning curve as a community that has been understanding why data is so powerful and growing through techniques, right? Analytics maturity curve, and we all started basic and descriptive, and now we're predictive, and now Gen AI is a big part of it. But Also, there is still a lot of leaders that don't quite understand what this means for them, for their organization, for their teams. So I think that fostering this AI literacy and really explore the strategy that is going to cultivate, because once again, this has to be as organic as possible. And that's a shift that has been going on in the last 20 years. 20 years ago, random forest was like Chinese for an 80% of the personas in the field. Today, it resonates way more. Like there is a lot more people that understands like, oh, predictive analytics has a lot of value. Random forest is an example of a model that can take you to predictive, and it's a lot more education as part of it, but not quite enough. And I will say that for leaders, especially, it's extremely important that AI literacy is part of that culture. So, things what works today that I see in the field, what's working. There is a lot of sharing insights within teams. So usually now there is one thought leader, driver that connects the dots behind the scenes for the organization. So it's AI literacy, as in, let me tell you what is happening here and why it's important for you, but at the same time, what are the risks for you and what is the role of your team as part of it. And sometimes defining that, that's the framework, right? If you think about a framework, let's think about an eight symbol where you have the first top left as a group of personas that is connecting to the infrastructure and bringing the silos and yada yada yada. Then you have a second group of personas that are analyzing and describing and visualizing and dashboarding from the descriptive analytics perspective. But then you have a group of personas that is going to deploy that into a production environment with other group of personas that get the benefit out of it, interrogating that data in a real time. And then you're going to have another group of personas that care about regulations, that care about outcomes, that care about hallucinations, that care about many other things. So seeing that framework from outside in a more holistic way is an invitation to think outside your box and understand that you are part of a bigger system. And I think that literacy has to be part of the strategy that these enterprise accounts adopt today. And I am seeing it in the field. It's happening, but it's happening slowly. And sometimes it's because a bad outcome already happened, and then you go to reverse engineer. And, oh, how do we avoid that? And not so much a proactive approach. So this is an invitation for a proactive approach. Like, okay, we already know this is powerful. The last 20 years, hardware, software, better compute, more powerful resources, better infrastructures, more efficient deployments, but at the same time, what is in for me and how I'm going to ensure that I am maximizing the opportunity from my domain expert perspective with my diverse team, with my regulations for my account and my enterprise. And that is the cherry on top, right? It's not only about the data. No, it's so much more about that. And this is the combination of technology processes and the personas, which at the end are the empowered humans making better decisions. But multivariable model, go back to the basics, right? It's definitely not just about the data.
Perfectly full circle. We've had the opportunity to learn a bit from you. Let's learn a little about you. Outside of work, tell me about yourself.
I love painting. It's one of my favorite things to do. I actually co-own a pen by number company where we focused on the balance. It's called the taste of balance. And the focus there is, have a time where you're gonna think about you. It's a me time. So is your favorite podcast? Play it. Your favorite list? Play it. I don't know. I am into candles and I like lighting my favorite incense, for example, and sit down and enjoy my favorite drink with a phenomenal sunset and play with colors. I don't even know how to express the sense of accomplishment and peace that that provides, to the point that I actually package a canvas with colors and brushes for people to experience that, and that's part of it. I also not only mix colors like that, but I also mix music. So I have a DJ station, and I have a very serious collection of drums. So I am into percussion. I'm Colombian, and I love everything that is salsa and the African salsa rhythms, and I like mixing that with a lot of what we call Afro house, but it's an Afro house that is very Latin influenced, as you can imagine. So I spend a lot of time mixing music, and one of the funny things that I used to be a professor back in Colombia over 20 years ago. I am teaching again. I am starting a class next week. I'm going to be teaching everything AI and data related for enterprise deployments for Latin American community. So it's going to be in Spanish. But I'm back to it, and I am actually very excited about it because I love when a group of people connects a couple of dots and feel that that's something that is going to benefit them in their daily lives. So I'm super excited about that. Now, 20 years ago, I was teaching a class on signal processing. So the whole Fourier and the whole wave generation and the whole thing. Funny enough, as a DJ, I actually enjoy that tremendously because when I am mixing music, I am seeing the song as a wave full of colors. So the different frequencies are showing you the different colors and so on. And at the end, that's kind of a key on how to mix it. And that's something that I enjoy tremendously. So from the music and art perspective, those are my top two hobbies. I'm also the president of the High Tech High Heels Southeast Texas chapter. And what that means is that we have a group of 12 to 15 women that are working at different tech companies around. And we together to bring all of these insights and lessons learned and everything that we have been learning from the field into how can we do better, and specifically to ensure that we support initiatives like STEAM, and how we empower different educators and different organizations that actually host academic and education opportunities for younger generations to understand what tech brings to the table and what kind of opportunities they can have. Pretty much how the sky is the limit when you understand a couple of things from the tech perspective. So we are very passionate about things that we can do to move the needle, and that's also part of what I do on my daily basis.
I absolutely love all of that. I would argue, negative artistic capability.
That's also a thing.
Okay, yeah, we'll call it very abstract, very interpretive art
Okay.
if I were to create.
Good.
Uh, but I am a consumer of many types of artistic and creative pursuits, and I love that and respect the fact that you're able to make stuff that looks like is good behind you. So I'll have to check out your music as well. I also love hearing about really any initiative that's getting more people involved in tech and in data. It feels like the world of data is growing faster than the number of people that are doing it and that really fundamentally understand it.
Yes.
And anything we can do to get more people and more types of people into the data, technology, math, IT, even science worlds, the better, right? Like we've got an uphill battle, and it feels like technology is outpacing us, right? Sooner or later, our AI overlords are going to be knocking on the door. So we got to get as many people, smart people as we can, educated.
100%. Yeah. 100%.
And that's exactly kind of what you closed with, right?
Mhm.
That idea around literacy.
Mhm.
And I think that it falls on the shoulders of every generation to set up the next generation to be as literate in the things that are going to be important as we can.
Yes, and it's gonna be more and more and more and more important for us as humans.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a fact, right? Or you have seen Black Mirror, and we tend to go into that rabbit hole, but
Hopefully that's not a good standard for what the future will look like. On the other hand, they're what do they say? Art imitates reality. I'm sure that there will be some Black Mirror-esque elements of the future, just as there are about the present.
they are already popping up,
Yeah.
and I think that's exactly why right now is more important than ever. So
Yeah.
let's understand what this is, but also I think this is a good chapter for humans that do understand what to do with it and to maximize the value. And that goes obviously from the enterprise level. I mean, that has to be tied to ROI and it has to be tied to some needle that you're actually moving as a team. But on the personal level, like, have you tried the Mid Journeys of the World and all of these art generation? Like, I am very impressed with what Gen AI can do today, and I feel more empowered than ever. So this is a good chapter for the human that understands what to do with it, and this is the opportunity to get up to speed for the human that doesn't just yet, and ensure that we are as educated as possible, so we can actually maximize the decision process, and it can be optimal not only from the work perspective but also in the daily life of a regular human right now. There is a lot that you can do with AI that actually empowers you in daily basis, right?
If anybody's liked what you had to say today, wants to reach out, learn a little bit more, collaborate with you on something, where are the best places to find you?
I said LinkedIn is the best place to get in touch and DM me, and I'm actually very responsive of it.
Yeah.
So I would say that's the best from the virtual perspective. Now I'm also in 3 dimensions in a lot of these tech conferences around, very into this community. So I live in Houston, Texas, and AI, machine learning, and oil and gas, and all of that is coming. So I will be in person at all of these events. But for anybody else, I think LinkedIn is the best approach.
Tell us if anybody's interested in checking out some of your music or your art or paint by numbers, where do we find those?
Yeah, you can Google The Taste of Balance paint by number, and that's the name of my company. And also in SoundCloud, I have a DJ account, and I have some of my mixes posted there, and it's under my name, Catalina Herrera SoundCloud.
I love it. Catalina, this was such a fun conversation. We'd gotten to talk about a couple of these themes before on the podcast, but never have we gotten to be so prescriptive about solutions, which was really cool. It's really cool when you don't just have to lament what's going on. You can be like, here's what we do about it. And I couldn't agree more that I think the answer is trying to foster literacy and trying to get more people involved. But it was such a pleasure to get that opportunity and to have your experience. Thank you so much for the time coming on here.
Absolutely, Ryan. I enjoyed the conversation as well. It's always good to connect with mind-like people, and let's shape this future together. I think it's a phenomenal opportunity that we have in our hands right now, and this is a fun chapter. Let's maximize what we can do with it. Yeah,
It is fun. I also want to make sure to thank the listeners. Thank you so much for making it this far. If you have, please make sure to tell a friend, give us a review, hopefully a good one, like, subscribe, do all of that stuff. It helps keep the podcast running and makes me just feel warm and fuzzy inside that I'm not yelling into the void. Catalina, thank you again so much for doing the podcast. And this has been another exciting episode of the Making Better Decisions podcast. Thanks for listening. That's a wrap for today's episode of Making Better Decisions. For show notes and more, visit makingbetterdecisions.live. A special thank you to our sponsor, Canopy Analytic. Canopy Analytic is a boutique consultancy focused on business intelligence and data engineering. They help companies make better decisions using data. For more information, visit canopyanalytic.com. There's a better way. Let's find it together and make better decisions. Thank you so much for listening. We'll catch you next week. Peace.